roughly $11,000 a year. It hadn't changed much. If anything, it's gone down over as far back as you can see, and it's well below the national average, about $2,500 below the national average. And you might say, well, maybe it should be less expensive in Texas. Well, actually, no. We have two difficulties that we have to contend with in Texas. One is the number of children who are poor. In Texas, the number of children who are economically disadvantaged is disproportionately larger than other states, and it takes more resources to educate children who are economically disadvantaged. And second is language. So we have more children who speak a language other than English, and that takes more resources. So it actually might ought to cost more per student to give them a quality education, and we're spending less per student. And I think you ask any teacher and any administrator and any parent, and you ask any employer and any college professor, they will tell you that we aren't investing properly in public education. So we have to put more money into public education. And I think everybody agrees. Does everybody here agree? Okay. We'll have a question and answer session. So if you'd rather wait till then to throw the tough question, disagree, just as long as you throw it at me. That's what makes this fun, okay? So where's the money going to come from? So let's talk about where's the money going to come from. Well, it's not going to come from higher property taxes on the Texans who live and work here, because our taxes are too high already. Do you agree with that? Property taxes are too high for homeowners and small businesses for reasons that I shall explain in a moment. But if we need more money for public education, we cannot raise taxes. We are paying too much already. So where's the money going to come from? Well, I've got good news for you. I found it. I found the money when I was running for comptroller in 2014, which is one of the reasons why I'm still running, because I know where that money is. I found it, and I'm now going to tell you where it is. We are missing from our revenue systems in the state $5 billion a year from the owners of large commercial and industrial properties who are underpaying their taxes. We are not holding them to account to the standard called for in the Texas Constitution. They are underpaying our taxes, and that's where we're going to find the money. Now let me explain to you how it is they're getting away with this. And I'll tell you a story. It was when I was running for comptroller. I knew that we had a problem. I knew that something was wrong. If our property taxes are going up and our spending in schools are going down, I knew that there was a problem, and I searched. This is what I do for a living as a consultant, as a county consultant. I searched and I searched and I searched, and I regret to say I wasn't smart enough to find it on my own. But one night, late at night, I got a call from a woman who is now on the county commissioner in Travis County, Bridget Shea, if anybody knows Bridget. And she called and she said, Mike, I haven't heard you say a word yet in your campaign about the big loophole. And I said, Bridget, what loophole is it? I'm so glad I returned the call. It was about 11:30 at night. She's got more energy than I have. I really just wanted to be left alone. I had another 45 minutes to drive home. But I called her back and she said, you haven't said a word about the loophole. You need to know about the loophole. And she explained it to me, and I began to dig. And that's when I discovered that there is a very well-kept secret in the state of Texas, that there is a huge loophole in the property tax laws, and the owners of large commercial industrial properties exploit it to the tune of $5 billion a year. And all we have to do is close that loophole, and I will explain to you in a moment, which is as easy as falling off a log, and we will recover $5 billion, and then we can put that into public education. That's where the money is, and it is not raising taxes. And I hope that Dan Patrick is listening, because this is not raising taxes. Now let me explain to you this loophole. First of all, by a show of hands, does anybody here already know about the loophole? A little bit? Good. So we have some. Okay, so here's the deal. Back in 1997, I think it was Rich Tino's 75th legislature. Back in 1997, legislation was proposed at the very end of the session, under cover of darkness, not open to public hearing or debate, called the Equal and Uniform Law. It was passed in 1997. And it's a pretty simple law, and it's designed to be, Doug, right? Okay, Doug, I'm going to put you to work here. It's designed to make sure that Doug and I, as neighbors, homeowners, that we don't get a raw deal, that our appraisals, which drives property taxes, are fair. Now, let's assume, here's how it works. Let's assume that Doug and I are neighbors. Let's assume our houses are comparable, and the appraisals come in and say that, I'm just going to make up a number. They say, Doug, your house is worth $200,000. And they say, Mike, your house is worth $250,000. And I say, well, that can't be right, because our properties are comparable. I think I'm getting a raw deal. The law says that I can get my appraisal reduced, so it's not $250,000, but it's $200,000, and then my taxes go down appropriately. And that makes sense, right? So far, so good. And I like that. I mean, anything that protects homeowners and small businesses, I'm for. But the wording in the language was such that it created a loophole that some clever lawyer somewhere, no offense to lawyers, you know, accountants are just folks that couldn't get into law school. Or actually, lawyers are folks that couldn't get into an accounting degree. Some clever lawyer figured out that that law was worded so improperly that they could exploit it. And they do, and here's how. Now let's assume that Doug and I are downtown skyscrapers, okay? Doug is young and handsome and in the right part of town with great restaurants nearby and great parking and great access, and everybody wants to be a tenant. And Doug is worth a lot of money. And I'm old, I'm tired, I'm in the bad part of town, bad restaurants, bad parking, bad everything. Nobody wants to live in my building. I'm only half full. I'm not worth as much. Let's say that the appraisers tell Doug that he's worth $500 million. And they tell me that I'm worth $250 million. Doug says, I'm going to get me a lawyer, and I'm going to sue, and I'm going to get my appraisal reduced from $500 to $250. And I'm going to cut my tax bill in half because Mike's a skyscraper and I'm a skyscraper. And that's how it works. And it's not fair, and they do it a lot. Doug, you're worth every bit of $500 million. So you see how that works? It's downtown skyscrapers, it's refineries, it's shopping malls, it's hotels, it's racetracks outside of Austin. An extraordinary number of large commercial and industrial properties are undervalued because of the equal and uniform law, and everybody knows it. And let me explain to you how I know this. This law was introduced in 1997, and within a few years it was obvious that something is terribly wrong. Even Rick Perry, the moderate that he is by relative standards, not smart, I didn't say smart, not smart but moderate, that's a dangerous combination. Even he knew that we had a problem. And so he organized a commission or a study group or what have you, and they proposed legislation. They said, we have a property tax death spiral. They even asked the large appraisal districts in the state in 2006 to do the math and to come back and analyze and tell us how big a problem is this. And the problem was huge. We had $4 billion missing per year by 2006. So we have to close that loophole. So legislation was proposed to close it, and it died. And then legislation was proposed again in the next session, and it died. And legislation to close that loophole always goes and always dies a quiet death. And that, my friends, is the power of the lieutenant governor, because when I'm the lieutenant governor, they will vote to close that loophole. You see the power? Because if you don't vote, you don't have to go back to your district and explain yourself. Whereas, and people always ask this, Mike, you might be a Democrat lieutenant governor, but you're going to be surrounded by Republicans. How in the world are you going to get anything done? The power of the lieutenant governor is the power to compel your state senator to vote. And when I compel them to vote to close the loophole, they will close it, because they can't possibly go back to their districts and say, I left the loophole open, so you have to pay more in taxes and we can start your school. They will do the right thing. They will close that loophole. And it's a very simple, when we get into the question and answers, if you'd like to know what the explanation is on how to close it, I'm very happy to get into details. All I have to say is that that's a very simple solution. We do that one thing in my first term as lieutenant governor and recover that $5 billion, and we are well on our way to showing Texans what it's like to have honest leadership in government.